till January so they can finally take their seats. Hey, they got a lot of snow in D.C. yesterday, too. D.C. got slammed as well. The whole eastern seaboard. It's pretty white out there, Jillian.
It is.
You want to comment on that? All right. Police officers in New York cannot arrest illegal immigrants for the feds. A judge ruling that they must now have a judicial warrant. The decision is based on a case about an immigrant who overstayed his visa. Police arrested the man with an ICE detainer after a judge released him for a separate crime. The court finding that the officers broke the law by honoring that detainer.
The Trump administration gives the green light to a new border wall in Arizona. A Montana company will replace a 32-mile-long barrier and upgrade existing fencing. Construction on the $324 million project will begin in April.
And now it is time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. We begin with the good. Go ahead and gobble till you wobble. I like that. Thanksgiving dinner is cheaper this year. Something got cheaper. According to the American Farm Bureau, the average meal will cost $48.90. That's down 22 cents from last year. Okay.
All right, next the bad. A brawl breaking out in the Sri Lankan parliament. Lawmakers fighting over who should lead the country after weeks of political chaos. At least one person was hospitalized, another accused of pulling out a knife.
Wow, Sri Lanka. Finally, the ugly. A Florida Sheriff's Office Facebook page up to its neck in comments over this drug suspect's mugshot. This guy lifts. Tim writing, they caught him just in the neck of time. Angel on Facebook says, did anybody notify his neck of kin? Wow, these are some witty people. Ramon writing, you should be ashamed of yourselves. All this negativity isn't right at all. Guys got a gym regimen.
That's really funny. All right, thanks for joining us on this Friday. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, enjoy it.
See you Monday.
We're stuck in the snow. We'll see you later.
Fox and Friends starts right now.
The first ever statewide hand recount just ordered in Florida's hotly contested Senate race.
It's going to be 100 tables, 6 people per table. They're going to be looking into 18 bins of over and under votes.
Kamala Harris is suggesting that the perception of ICE was the same perception as the Ku Klux Klan.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
That puts ICE in the same category as the KKK. Is that what you're asking me?
What Kamala Harris did today was disgusting.
The president stressed the importance of supporting veterans and their families.
Military families are the backbone of our nation. God bless America. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Art Unruh, Air Force Staff Sergeant. He will get this crowd whipped up as that flag is raised. We thank him and all the men and women who served.
To get like 10 or 15 blocks in the city. And I heard stories of people like in New Jersey taking them 9 hours to get home.
Yep. My daughter was at the Port Authority bus terminal waiting to go home, and they said, you know what? There may not be any buses for at least an hour. And then she went to took the train, but then they announced, you know, there aren't going to be any buses tonight, and we're going to close the top floor because of overcrowding.
Thank goodness she took the train and didn't wait there.
That's called go to the Marriott.
Yeah, there's my daughter right there.
Yeah.
Wow. She's in somewhere. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed today's telecast. Sit back, relax in your nice, warm, cozy house because we got all the news.
Fires out in California. We got snow here in the Northeast. And there's that voter recount down in Florida.
That's right. Ron DeSantis appears to be Florida's next governor after Andrew Gillum only picked up 1 vote in the machine recount. But he is not conceding.
The first ever statewide hand recount of overvotes and undervotes is set for the hotly contested Senate race.
Griff Jenkins is live in Lauderhill, Florida, where the manual recount will begin in less than an hour. Griff, tell us why.
Good morning, guys. We've got hundreds of volunteers lining up for the hand recount behind me. But first, let's go to the race that's coming to an end, and that is the governor's race. If you look at the numbers in yesterday's recount for Ron DeSantis over Andrew Gillum, DeSantis leading by more than 33,000 votes. That's a margin of 0.41%, well above the threshold of a 0.25 percentage point that would have called for a hand recount. But Gillum, as you mentioned, not conceding, putting out this statement. comment, quote, while our race has fallen outside the window for a manual recount, we still believe that before the election results are certified, the state of Florida must count every legally cast vote. However, we expect on Tuesday, at the very latest, the DeSantis race will be certified and he will become the next governor of Florida. Now, as for that hand recount, look at this live picture right now. This is the arena where the real fight will happen between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson. It is the recount tables being set up here. 100 tables you're looking at. Here's how it's going to work. There's going to be 6 people per table, 2 election officials, and 4 lawyers, 2 Democrat, 2 Republican, and they're only counting the over and under votes that were separated from the machine recount yesterday. That is where the real fight's going to happen, because the lawyers will debate over what the voters' intent was on those, and you're going to hear a whole lot about that up in Palm Beach, by the way. They're trying to get to that. It doesn't look like they're there yet. Maybe by 11, 12 o'clock today, we'll have to wait and find out. But this is where the action is today, and this is where the fight's going to happen between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson. Guys, back to you.
Hey, Griff, quick clarification. If Palm Beach missed the deadline,
they did.
Why do we care what they did? Because if Broward County can't get an extension of 2 minutes, why should we wait for Palm Beach to finish an extra day?
Well, the answer under Florida statute law, Brian, is that the numbers, if they didn't get the recount done in time, the numbers revert to the original election night numbers, but the hand recount will still continue because that margin was under the 0.25%. So they have the over and under votes that they're going to go to. The real question I've been asking every lawyer here is, if you do the under over votes and there is a challenge, is there an invalidation because you didn't get those numbers in time? Nobody wants to answer that question yet. That's one you're going to have to get a legal scholar on, guys.
Could come up today. All right, Griff Jenkins with the people who are going into the big room where the counting will begin, the manual recount in 55 minutes. It just blows your mind. 15 minutes yesterday before 3 o'clock at 2:45, they announced down in Broward County, we're done counting. And then this one, apparently, it looks as if whoever they had upload the information to the state didn't know what he was doing. They missed it by 2 minutes. Now, Matt Gaetz was on Fox News last night, and he said he thinks they did it intentionally.
Rick Scott said that too.
Yeah, they think because he picked up Rick Scott picked up 1,000 votes.
I thought it was 779 about
1,000 votes in Broward County. Isn't that convenient? Oh, we go back to the old number. Where
well, Rick Scott was saying it was intentional, and I guess Matt Gaetz said it was intentional too. They're blaming Brenda Snipes for this.
Yeah.
But the guy who actually was trying to upload it in the computer, he's the election worker. His name's Joe D'Alessandro. He said, I just worked my blank off for nothing. He said, I wasn't familiar with the website. I was trying to upload it to the Division of Election, and I couldn't figure it out. He said, so the last 5 days basically have been a waste.
Yeah, so bottom line is, nobody's making up 12,000 to 15,000 votes that Rick Scott has an advantage over Senator Nelson. And for the governor's race, why Gilliam hasn't gone back and said, okay, I concede again, is beyond me. I'm for playing out the string. But he's down 36,000 votes, and DeSantis picked up a handful. This is done, and they don't. And the percentage is far enough away where the hand vote, the hand counting does not warrant it.
According to Mr. Gillum, he refuses to concede. He says there are tens of thousands of votes that have not yet been counted.
All right, so
What's
bottom
he
line,
talking about?
Broward County, the machine recount, it didn't work. They didn't get the numbers in by 3 o'clock. So now you go back to the old numbers, and that's why Ron DeSantis won, because he won by more than that 0.25% margin. But the two races that are contested, Scott and Nelson, the Senate race, and then Matt Caldwell and Nikki Fried for Agriculture Commission.
So they're going to have to finish up this hand recounting by noon on Sunday, and then they certify a couple of days later.
And just real quick on the Georgia governor's race.
Oh, yeah.
55,000 votes separate this two. It should be done by Friday night, but already prominent Democrats are already crying foul that there was corruption. Hillary Clinton, Sherrod Brown, and Cory Booker.
Right.
You talk about irresponsible. They were on President Trump for saying he was irresponsible because he had problems with leading up to the election. That's irresponsible.
Well, Abrams would need 17,000 votes to even get a recount, and that is not happening. That's a lot of votes. So, but they still have not decided who's going to win. Maybe that'll happen today, they're saying. saying.
All right,
let's move on down to the border.
Let's go to the west coast of the United States. The caravan, we've told you, thousands are already in Tijuana. And as it turns out, there's some backlash from the locals. The people who live in Tijuana do not like the fact that there are all these migrants in their town. And there have been scuffles and violence have broken out. In fact, a couple of days ago, after midnight, residents assaulted journalists and injured at least 3 people, all because the migrants, there is an area for them. We told you about it yesterday. A sports stadium where they're supposed to be, but they want to be in different parts of Tijuana, and in this case, the locals don't want.
Yeah, I get it. Well, the residents there are saying they're singing, as you can hear them. They're chanting Mexico, Mexico. They're waving their flags, and they were singing the Mexican national anthem. But Time Magazine interviewed one of the guys that's from Honduras, one of the migrants, and he says they plan to overwhelm border security and the agents down there. Listen. Oh, this is what. Okay, it's not a soundbite. It's a quote. All right. It's going to be all against one, one against all of Central America against one, and one against Central America, all against Trump, and Trump against all.
Hey, right. And so what the plan of this, Mr. Salinas, is just like they broke into Mexico through that fence in Guatemala. They think they can do that into the United States, either overwhelm the guards at the port or just find a place where they can
society. Hey, people of Tijuana, blame Mexico. They could have stopped this whole thing at the border. They didn't. Next, let's talk about the people in charge of bringing law and order, those who overstay their visas or are here illegally. That's ICE. They have an extremely hard job. Maybe 55% of the people that work for ICE are Hispanic. That's an important note, because this exchange yesterday with Senator Kamala Harris, who's constantly running for president, it was taking on ICE Director Ron Vitiello. And here's the exchange that we think is worthy of you to just notice, sit back and watch. And if you're like me, you're very angered by the disrespect thrown at law enforcement once again.
Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between.
That there's a perception.
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception
that puts ICE in the same category as the KKK? Is that what you're asking me?
Are you aware that there's a causing fear and intimidation, particularly among immigrants, and specifically among immigrants coming from Mexico and Central America? Are you aware of the perception?
I do not see a parallel.
Worried about his Q rating with illegal immigrants here who have overstayed their visas or committed a crime and have to be expelled. You have to ask a guy that's going to head up an ICE organization if he's aware of the organization has a reputation of being of having this negative connotation like the KKK.
Well, this whole conversation got started. She wanted to know about a tweet he sent out 3 years ago in 2015 that said that the Democratic Party was comparable to a liberal-cratic or neo-Klanist entity. And the tweet was in response to Mark Levin's commentary discussing the Democratic Party's role in 20th century segregation. That, according to the Washington Examiner.
Okay, let us know what you think about that, friends at foxnews.com. In the meantime, we're going to get some more headlines with Jillian this morning.
I just want to say one thing. It looks like the Border Patrol, 55% Hispanic. We're still trying to get a number on ICE in terms of people who make up ICE. Hi, Jillian.
Hi, good morning. Happy Friday. Let's get you caught up on your news, starting with this Fox News alert. And an American citizen held in North Korea for a month will be deported. The man reportedly illegally entered the country from China. No other details have been released. State media also announcing overnight North Korea is testing a new ultra-modern tactical weapon. This despite promising to scale back their nuclear program. Details about the weapon are unclear. Also breaking overnight, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange reportedly facing charges in the U.S. The Associated Press says the DOJ is preparing them under seal. The Washington Post reports it could significantly advance the Russia probe, saying special counsel Robert Mueller looked at WikiLeaks' hack and publication of DNC emails. A spokesperson for the Virginia Court District, where the documents were filed, says Assange's name was not intended to be included. Thousands of officers honor a hero sergeant killed trying to save lives in the massacre at a country music bar. Get passed by. Helis was the first person inside the Borderline bar when the suspect opened fire. 11 other people were also killed. Helis lost his life at the same restaurant where he proposed to his wife 3 decades ago. Guys.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Jillian, thank you.
All right, 13 minutes after the top of the hour, and coming up, Democrats are divided about backing Nancy Pelosi for the House Speaker. But should Republicans force their hand by throwing their entire party's support behind her? Why the GOP might back Nancy.
Never, Nancy.
The election were held today on the House floor. Do you have the votes to be elected Speaker?
Yes.
What do you make of Marcia Fudge trying to challenge you, or considering challenge?
Say it to everybody. Come on in, the water's warm.
Nancy Pelosi is still 100% confident in her future as House Speaker once again, despite the drumbeat of a number of Democrats who want to challenge her leadership. But should Republicans force Democrats' hand and vote for Pelosi for Speaker? Here to weigh in, Chris Wilson, Republican strategist and former campaign pollster for Senator Ted Cruz, joins us from Oklahoma City. Chris, what do you think? I know that in the past, Republicans have used Nancy Pelosi as the perfect foil, the enemy of the Republican Party, to do all sorts of things. Would it be in their best interest to vote for her for Speaker if you're a Republican?
Well, it's certainly in their best interest to have her serve as Speaker. I mean, clearly President Trump understands that, as he's already called for Republicans to get behind Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. She reminds the American people why they don't like politics. She reminds them why they don't like Democrats, quite frankly. And interestingly enough, as you point out, you have some people challenging her. You have a lot of national Democrat strategists writing that she should not be a Speaker. But the best thing for Republicans is to have her in that role. And I think if you do start to see slippage amongst her conference in terms of supporting her, it is in Republicans' best interest to jump in and support her. And you know what's interesting? It would give Republicans sort of a bipartisan flair. Hey, look, we even supported Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. So yeah, I think it certainly makes for political theater, but it also is probably better for the Republican Party and President Trump moving forward, because she just can't help herself.
Well, you and I during the break were talking about this new Gallup number. I think 56% of Democrats don't want her as Speaker. But then you hear her yesterday saying she's 100% sure she's going to be Speaker. If she was 100% sure that she had the votes, they would have had the vote yesterday.
Well, that's probably true. What's interesting about the Gallup numbers, it's almost the same number as Gingrich's number in terms of Republicans not supporting him whenever his conference turned on him. Right. So clearly there's some, the natives are restless a little bit there, and we'll see what happens in terms of when it does come to a vote. She is being challenged. But again, I just kind of get back to, if that starts to slip away, Republicans are not going to have the Speaker of the House. So why not try and make sure that the best face you could have in the Democratic Party for the Republican Party, which is clearly Nancy Pelosi, her own party doesn't support her. 56% of Democrats, even higher amongst liberal Democrats, Steve, put her back in that chair.
A little Operation Chaos on the part of the Republicans.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good weekend.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, some Democrats are furious that acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker will not recuse himself from the Russia probe.
Hatchet man to subvert or sabotage the Mueller investigation.
He serves the president's purpose.
But law professor Jonathan Turley says Whitaker has no reason to step aside. He will explain why next. And Beto O'Rourke is running for president in 2020? Maybe. Actually, we just got kind of a hint.
Here's some quick headlines. The race for governor in Georgia could be called today. Counties scrambling to certify the election results after a federal judge ordered some absentee ballots be mistakes, and they should be counted, he says. It is unclear how many votes might be affected. Republican Brian Kemp is leading Democrat Stacey Abrams by nearly 55,000 votes there. And Beto O'Rourke blogging about a run that he took near the U.S. Capitol. Now many people are speculating it could be a hint about a White House run. In his post, O'Rourke quotes Abraham Lincoln, who is the only American to lose a Senate race and win the presidency 2 years later. Brian?
Lincoln ended up being a good president, as you know. Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker assuring Senator Lindsey Graham he will not recuse himself from overseeing the Mueller probe, and many Democrats not happy.
Matthew Whitaker is an illegal appointment as Attorney General.
Whitaker was placed there to be a hatchet man to subvert or sabotage the Mueller investigation.
He serves the president's purpose of cutting by 1,000 cuts and dealing death to this investigation. It's a kind of slow motion Saturday Night Massacre.
It's so unusual to see these Democrats critical of the president. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back. Here with reactions, constitutional law professor, George Washington School of Law, Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, Whitaker stays, right?
He does. You know, the argument that he was required to recuse himself under Department of Justice rules is really unfounded. You know, while some of his statements may have given us palpitations, the conflicts for people like Rosenstein is an absolute cardiac arrest. And these Democrats did not and have not raised those conflicts. So I think that the Democrats would be more credible if they were equally concerned about the conflicts of interest that some of us have pointed out with regard to Mueller and Rosenstein. But in terms of the DOJ rules, there is no mandatory recusal here. And also, this is not an unprecedented situation. People, before they enter government office, may be politicians or commentators, but that doesn't mean that they toss away their ethical obligations when they assume new positions.
Exactly. Jonathan, second topic, Jeff Flake says, I'm going to hold out, and I'm not going to give the president any judicial picks unless we get a vote on the floor, which is now backed by Chuck Grassley, to make sure to preserve that Robert Mueller not get fired, like almost protect him against the president getting rid of the special counsel. Do you believe that the president should do you believe that the president just wait him out and wait for the next Senate to come in because it won't really matter?
Well, first of all, you know, I think it would be a terrible mistake for the administration to try to shut down the Mueller investigation. It seems to be winding down. He needs to finish his work. But what's strange about this bill is it doesn't do as much as people suggest. It basically codifies the standard of the Department of Justice and expedites a review in the court. But the standard is really quite squishy, you know, about whether he was fired with good cause. It's actually fairly easy to make that out under the under the standard of the DOJ. So I'm not too sure why Senator Flake is that insistent on this bill passing, because I don't think it gives much to Mueller.
You know why, Jonathan? It's emotional. They hate each other, and this is his last shot. I know you want to think intellectually, but I think it's more schoolyard. Robert Mueller gave questions to President Trump. One of the responses from Rudy Giuliani is this: there are some of these questions create more issues for us legally than others. He said some were unnecessary, some were possible traps, and we might consider them as irrelevant. What do you think? What do you think these questions contain? What is Rudy getting at, one legal mind to another?
Well, look, the job of a defense attorney is to try to narrow these questions as much as possible, and the prosecutors have a good faith reason not to do that. They want to try to get as much information as they can. There is still a live torpedo in the water, whether Mueller is going to push for answers on issues that cover both obstruction and collusion, and whether there might be a subpoena fight in the future. So we still have to see whether Mueller is going to push hard on that, because the White House has largely prevailed in saying we want a narrow subject matter, but apparently it's not narrow enough in terms of the questions that have been asked.
And there's also a story out there that the question's got to be answered and handed in today. So it was a take-home test, but at one point you got to give it back.
That's right.
Jonathan Turley will never allow a take-home test. You finish it in the classroom at Georgetown. Thanks so much, George Washington. Excuse me. All right, coming up straight ahead is the story everyone is talking about. You have a couple and a homeless man. They team up to rip off the public. It's a huge GoFundMe page scam. We've got the text messages that help the police crack the case next. And Nancy Pelosi is thanking Reverend Al Sharpton for, quote, saving America. But does he really deserve America? Does he deserve that credit? Diamond and Silk know the answer, and together they will answer.
Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception
that puts ICE in the same category as the KKK?
So that started as a conversation about a tweet that he had sent out 3 years ago and then wound up comparing ICE to the KKK.
Which he said he made a mistake, Steve. He said that I should have put it on my private account.
Absolutely. Let's get Diamond and Silk, social media stars, big President Trump supporters joining us from Diamond and Silk headquarters somewhere in the world. Ladies, what do you make of the comparison that Senator Harris made yesterday?
You know, Kamala should be ashamed of herself. The blatant disrespect for our enforcement of immigration. You know, if Camilla want to talk about the KKK, she need to talk about her party who created the KKK to intimidate, manipulate in order to dominate. And the same thing is happening today. By asking him those type of questions, putting him on the edge of him seat, it's a form of manipulation is what it is. When we look at what's happening in Florida, it's a form of manipulation. It's all to dominate, and that's what they're trying to do. Exactly. Shame on Kamala Harris. She needs to understand if she run for president, we will not be voting for her. No, she won't win.
Well, Nancy Pelosi says that Al Sharpton has saved America. She had this message for him at the National Action Network's conference. Listen to this.
Thank you for helping take back America. People all over the place are calling me, writing on the airports here or there. Thank you for saving America. I give those thanks to you. Thank you for saving America. Reverend Sharpton, thank you for saving America.
Well, what do you think of that?
Al Sharpton hasn't saved America. No, what he has done or tried to do is divide America, hoodwink black people, and exploit the pain of black people is what he's done. That's what he's been doing, okay? He hasn't done anything. If he was really behind America and wanted America to prosper, why wasn't he behind the tax cuts? Why isn't he happy about the lowest unemployment, especially among African Americans? But he hasn't done anything for America but race baited is all he's done. He hasn't done anything for America.
And the only time you see Al Sharpton is whenever a white person has killed a black person. But when it's the black person have killed another black person, Al Sharpton go hide his head like a turtle. You don't see him no more.
You surely don't.
President Obama looked at him as a confidant.
Well, see, shame on President Obama. And President Obama is not a saint. I know that Michelle Obama is running around taught her book. But you know what really bothers me? The fact that they can disrespect a sitting president, disrespect the Oval Office. It's so disrespectful. They haven't done anything for America. That's why America chose President Donald Trump.
That's right. And if you also look at President Obama, we've been running around here talking about justice reform, prison reform. We had a biracial president. His black side did nothing for black people when it came down to the prison reform. It was Donald J. Trump that put it on the table and said, bring it to me, I'll sign this into law. Obama did absolutely nothing for it.
It was a great moment. Let's see if it passes the Senate. Criminal justice reform, we've been talking about it for 20 years. It might have gotten done this week.
Ladies, a moment ago you mentioned what's going on down in Florida. What do you make of the fact that the races for governor and the U.S. Senate have been so close down there?
Well, first of all, I think that this is a mere ploy. They're getting ready for 2020 to see how they can change some rules or change the rules in the middle of the game. I think I call it the art of the steal is what I see. But it's not going to work. By you taking and you manipulating this and you questioning this, the integrity of the election has been questioned by all Americans, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, by playing games with these antics. Listen, when DeSantis take office, he needs to fire this lady, Brenda Snipes. Fire her immediately. This here has got to stop.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for being on with us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
for having us.
You're welcome. All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. And a Fox News alert now. At least 66 people, 600 now missing as wildfires pave a path of destruction in California. The president heads to the state tomorrow to meet with victims and tour the devastation. And take a look at this. Smoke from the campfire seen from outer space. Officials now worried that smoke could cause an increase in respiratory problems, especially in children and the elderly. The First Lady is calling out critics of her anti-bullying initiative.
It is not news or surprising to me that critics and the media have chosen to ridicule me for speaking out on this issue, and that's okay. I remain committed to tackling this topic because it will provide a better world for our children.
The First Lady defending her Be Best campaign. And how about this story? A homeless veteran and a couple face up to 10 years in prison for allegedly fooling the nation to get rich quick. We told you about this story when it happened. Well, now prosecutors say the couple made up a story about the homeless vet spending his last $20 on gas for the stranded woman, leading to a GoFundMe page that took in more than $400,000. Now, it's believed they met each other at least a month earlier than that campaign started. Investigators finding text messages between Caitlin McClure and a friend reading, quote, "The gas part is completely made up, but the guy isn't. I had to make something up to make people feel bad." And that was just one of multiple text messages. FAO Schwartz is reopening its doors today just in time for the holidays. And yes, the iconic giant piano will be there. Schwartz opening its doors right here in New York City. It shut down its previous flagship store 3 years ago. But seriously, I don't know a person in the world that doesn't want to do just that.
I have done that at that store.
Me too.
It's really cool.
And I am so excited that it's opening. That was such a staple in New York. Different location, but excited that it's coming back.
When you did it sound like the song?
No.
Me neither. All right. Thank you very much, Jillian. Meanwhile, we were telling you this at the top of the program. The Northeast first snowstorm of the season has inundated, as you can see, the Northeast and has claimed at least 7 lives.
Yeah, the powerful nor'easter causing a mess on the roads, including New York City's George Washington Bridge.
Janice Dean is here with the latest. Janice, you got to work.
We did, and this was an overachiever. When it first started in Texas and brought the earliest measurable snowfall in Houston, all the way up to the mid-Atlantic, D.C., getting 3 inches of snow, and now New York, the New York area, getting over 1.5 feet of snow. So a lot of snow in a very short period of time. That's what happened. The track was exactly forecast as it happened, but the fact that we had cold air in place meant that we had more hours of snow and not a mixing of sleet and rain, which is what we were anticipating. Sometimes snow is one of the hardest things to forecast, and that's why we got a lot of it in a very short period of time, and that's why a lot of folks were really mad yesterday during the rush hour. There's your forecast temps. This will be out of here by late this afternoon, and this evening we'll watch a clipper system across the Great Lakes, and the good news is things will quiet down, a quieter weather pattern as we head into travel next week, of course, Thanksgiving. But again, the good news is not a whole lot on the weather map. We do have a storm moving into California. That will bring much needed rain, and we'll follow that. All right. Back to you, Steve, Ainsley, and Brian.
All right. And Janice did warn us repeatedly yesterday. The nor'easter was coming, and it delivered.
And if you have a weather person in your office, listen to them.
Janice, last year, our first snow was after Christmas, right? So I think we just weren't prepared.
Well, this was very early on. This was the second biggest snowfall in November for Central Park. They got 6 inches of snow. It was a lot of snow, in some cases 3 times the amount that we were originally forecasting. So we don't get it right. We try our best. We're the ones that don't want to get the forecast wrong, but sometimes we do, and it just tells you you have to be prepared sometimes. If you're in your cars for 5 hours, you need to have an emergency kit with you.
I was just so glad my ice scraper was safe in the shed, so I was able to use my hand to get all the snow off.
All right, JD,
put it in the glove compartment.
I know.
Meanwhile, John Kerry traveling thousands of miles overseas to insult the president.
We can't have a sort of truculent child president. We need something serious.
And the secretary wasn't done there. We'll tell you what else he said.
And one of President Trump's biggest campaign promises was to help our heroes, and he has. Army vet Pete Hegseth says the president has been a game changer for our vets, and he joins us.
Military families are the backbone of our nation. So in addition to everything else, as you see, I did the promotion of military spouse hiring across the federal government. Fact is, I've done a lot. I could, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. That's a lot.
Well, President Trump visiting with Marines yesterday, highlighting his administration's efforts to improve veterans' care.
Our own Pete Hegseth, co-host of Fox & Friends Weekend, is here to break down some of the accomplishments and what still needs to be done. All right, so he's done a lot.
Yes.
What's he done?
So he makes a joke, I've done a lot, but he really, really has. First of all, no president in modern history, and I've talked to some presidential historians about this, has made veterans and veterans issues a top-tier part of their campaign. So from the beginning, he said, this matters to me. It's going to be a focus of why I get elected and what I execute on. Right. Immediately, he gets the Veterans Accountability Act passed, which allows them to fire poor-performing managers at the VA. And then the Mission Act, which gives veterans more choice. I'll tell you this. I was on the phone yesterday about it. They're still writing the rules about choice. The bureaucracy has to write it. The White House is very attuned to making sure that the bureaucrats at the VA don't undo choice and try to turn it into something more bureaucratic. They're very focused on it. They still need to deliver on that. But on the VA side, vets are seeing finally an emphasis that he promised and a culture there that's focused on delivering on the president's message.
So you think the president's going to go out to California? Do you think it would be great for him to go to the border and also visit those 5,000 troops that are there?
Oh, I think so, too. I mean, as far as the defense is concerned, troops feel like they've got a commander-in-chief that has their back, like they have a clearer mission, a sense of what that is. And I think James Mattis going down there yesterday underscored that also. He said, this is like a deployment, but it's defending your own country. The things you're learning here are exactly the type of things you'll do overseas. I also, in the intro, talked about military spouses. Love the fact that this president is focusing on the families of those who serve and making sure they get federal hiring preferences.
Well, did you hear what John Kerry said? He went across the pond. He's talking to British media, and he said this about our president. Listen.
I think people are tired of what's happening. They're tired of the embarrassment of what took place in Paris in the last few days. We can't have a sort of truculent child president. We need something serious.
Child president, what's your reaction?
Yeah, he's a buffoon. I really think he talks about childishness. You know what's childish is when your ally when Charlie Hebdo gets attacked and people are massacred in a terrorist attack, and your serious response is to bring James Taylor over there to play his guitar and say, you've got a friend in me and I'm going to give you a hug.
What about when the president chose to watch football instead of going over to France and standing in unity with the other European allies after that?
Exactly. And what about a former Secretary of State who understands that it is your job not to go overseas and disparage your commander-in-chief while he's executing foreign policy? I mean, listen, John Kerry will always be the guy who hucked his medals into the river and undercut the guys he served with by saying they committed war crimes, giving propaganda to the enemy. This is a guy whose compass has been off for his entire time in public service, and you see it even more here. He doesn't agree with the president, so he throws him under the bus and calls him a child overseas. It is the simple-minded, childish policies of the Obama administration that created so much of the mess they've had to undo since. He'll never see that, but that's the truth.
I don't think you like him.
I'm not a fan.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I mean, and especially the venue in which he did it is just terrible because between CNN International and between our former Obama officials going over ripping the president, they think that in America we have that view.
No, of course. They think that's the overwhelming view, and they don't get Fox News Channel always over there, so they don't see the whole picture.
All right. Pete, we'll be watching you this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
On this couch.
Okay, for 8 hours. Meanwhile, the dash cam video is shocking. An illegal immigrant opening fire on a police officer.
Facebook, but a stunning report claims Chuck Schumer told him to back off. Why he may have done that? You got to hear it. It's next.
From the New York Times.
Play, deny, deflect. The New York Times blasting Facebook for its year of crisis, claiming, quote, when Facebook users learned last spring that the company had compromised their privacy in its rush to expand, Facebook sought to deflect blame and mask the extent of the problem.
The report goes on to claim that while Zuckerberg and the social network were under fire, they might have received help from New York Senator Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, to slow walk the whole thing. Here to explain, who walked fast to get here, Kurt, the cyber guy. Kurt, unfold this as best you can.
Okay, first, as you're reading that lead into this story, I'm thinking to myself, I wish we'd had taken
all of the times I was here from 2016 until now where I said, keep your eye on Facebook. This doesn't smell right. And guess what? We were right. We were right all along. And now we're finding out that in terms of who's protecting Facebook now in the government, it's sort of both sides of both parties. And news out that Chuck Schumer has been very actively engaged with the lobbyists for Facebook, which, by the way, they've spent more in the first quarter of 2018 on lobbyists in Washington than at any other quarter in Facebook's history.
So he got a lot of money from Facebook.
Well, we don't
employees.
know.
38,000 plus.
That's another story. So apparently he's raising money. You were saying the 2016 election, right? Online from Facebook employees. Is there anything wrong with that? I'm not sure. But what doesn't smell right is when you have lobbyists get such great control over this Democratic senator who then goes, according to the article, and shuts down any sort of criticism for Facebook at this time. This is the time we need both party leadership out in front saying, Facebook, we're holding you accountable, because nobody's doing it. And they're getting away with taking our lives, and exactly what Tim Cook from Apple says, because he's saying it exactly how it is.
Did you see the two-part special on Frontline? And they look at Facebook, and basically Ukraine and other countries are saying they're using your vehicle to make phony stories and cause unrest in my country. Stop it. And they almost had no response.
And Facebook is like this. Now, what's going on? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be right back with you. They just deflect. They ignore.
You're avoiding the fact that they're going to come up with a new independent oversight committee. This is going to fix everything. This is what they say. First, it will prevent the concentration of too much decision-making within our teams. Second, it will create accountability and oversight. Third, it will provide assurance that these decisions are made in the best interests of our community and not for commercial reasons.
This guy sounds like a robot, no matter how he opens his mouth, even in a statement like that. I got to tell you, I don't trust Facebook leadership. I think they have tried over the last number of months to right the ship in terms of being more transparent. But their idea of transparency is like us trying to see the ocean through the snow. It's not going to happen.
How popular is Facebook now? Is it more popular than Twitter?
No, we're seeing, they're in a tailspin right now, not just in people engaging the service, but with employee morale has never been this low.
It's Sheryl Sandberg, they say, with the strategy to get in more money at times and maybe shelving morals.
Yeah, number 2 person at Facebook, she and Mark really are at the heart of this. And the board just jumped behind them. And so you're not going to see any changes there anytime soon. But I wanted to say that Tim Cook, Apple, is saying this. This is nothing but them trying to take our privacy and sell it.
More Fox and Friends coming up.
2 more hours.
I'm all about living